Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to Bloomberg for actually putting data at the center of this day two. I do have some slides, which I'm holding my fingers at. There we go. So what we're going to talk about today is data in the year of the global stocktake. And let's remember what a stocktake is. So a stocktake is a measurement. It's an audit. It is based on data. So I think that it's important for us to remember that we start there, but we certainly don't finish there. Because data needs to be able to be used to take action. That's what I'm going to talk about today. But first we need to think about what is CDP's story and what's our role here. So CDP is the global data disclosure platform for climate. I'm hoping that some of you in the audience already know what CDP is all about. But again, it's important right now to reiterate it. What CDP is a global solution to finding out where data and climate fit in. So what you can measure, you can manage. I'd like to use this as the title of our story. And let's call it a story. Let's do this right. So, once upon a time, three of our founders knocked on the door of number 10 Downing Street. And one of them is here today in the audience as well. Paul, you can hold me to account to make sure that I'm doing this right. So they knocked on the door to ask for endorsement, to say we want to ask the global community of corporates to disclose climate data because investors need it in order to make good decisions. And those founders got the endorsement. And of course, this is a very logical endorsement to give. Because in our story, our heroes were asking to be able to fight something that is a villain that we all see as being incredibly obvious. That villain is the frightening prospect of climate change. So we have grown since that day. That day was 23 years ago. And these statistics show that actually that endorsement from number 10 is very, very well founded. And CDP has become a global norm. So as our story unfolds, we are going to see that there's some positive change here. And the data says that we've got 66% of global market capitalization that disclosed to CDP, 85% of the S&P 500, sorry, 86% of the S&P 500, I'm moving at pace, and that 24% is the year-on-year increase just from last year to this year. So this is a compelling, positive story, but it's also global. Our number one disclosure country is the USA, and the second one is China. The third one is Japan. Our biggest growth rate is coming from Asia. This is really important to make sure that we're looking at a global, comparable, and comprehensive data set that we're gathering. Not only that, we're sector agnostic. So our biggest 5 sectors are manufacturing, services, materials, agriculture, and transport. But it would be silly not to also call out the fossil fuel industry, which has increased their disclosure to CDP in the last year by 12%. So there's some good news on this slide. There's some good news in the data, but there's lots more to do. I think we're hearing a lot about renewables, as we should. 3 times the amount of renewables need to be in the market so that we actually keep 1.5 alive. And 44% of companies disclosing to CDP do not report energy consumption data. So we have work to do. But disclosure itself is not enough. It needs to be actionable data. It needs to be decision-useful data. So what are we doing about that? And I need to keep things simple for myself in a very, very complicated world. So I think about it in the ABCs of data. So the first one is access to capital. And 740 of the global investors, representing $130 trillion worth of assets, have said to us, please have our authority to go and ask our investments, our issuers for this data. Business efficiency and supply chain. We're also working with 340 of the largest and most influential global supply chains in order to ask their customers to disclose through CDP. That segment, the business efficiency and supply chain, grew at 24% year on year. Sorry, 27% year on year, above the 24% that is our average disclosures. You can imagine that. If your customer asks you to do something, you're going to do it. So the third one is compliance, and I think we're hearing a lot about that. And we're delighted at CDP to already have committed to being the first platform working hand in hand with ISSB in order to be able to have the first tagged and aligned data set in 2024. So again, we're looking at these compliance opportunities not only to be able to service the financial markets, but also to service all of the compliance needs going forward. So the ABCs of data are driving us forward. So we're building tools in our story. We're building also how to deploy them and how to use them most effectively. Because then we're going to be a little bit armed. We're going to be equipped. We're going to be prepared to fight the villain in the story. So business efficiency and the supply chain, this is how we're all growing here. From 11% to 14%, less than 3% have climate-related requirements that are not included in their contracts. This is all changing rapidly. This slide is going to be completely irrelevant in 6 months' time because we're seeing such incredible growth in this sector. Scope 3 emissions. This is another driver of why businesses are also disclosing to the supply chain. This is tricky business. Scope 3 emissions data is difficult to pull together. It is difficult to quantify. Even when we're talking about some of our compliance requirements, there's a leniency or an onboarding that's going on with Scope 3. CDP is seeing that, and we're working on how we onboard various different customers, various different businesses, various different cities, states, and regions in order to make sure that Scope 3 is an important part going forward. So we've got all these tools. We see where we're going. Some things are positive. We've got a huge amount more work to do. So what's next? I see 3 areas that I'd like to think about. Transition plans. Again, I think all of us have been hearing a lot about transition plans. And again, I try and keep things simple. For a transition plan, you need 2 things. You need a baseline, which is data, and you need a science-based time-bound target. And then, once you do that, you need to tell us the actions that you are going to take from point A to point B. If you're not going to tell us the actions, how is it that we can measure? How is it we can monitor? How is it that we can together course correct and make sure we get where we need to go? So again, data first and data every year in order to be able to create transparency in this system. Ooh, that's fun. Nature and biodiversity, the second point that I wanted to think about what's next. We're delighted at CDP to have had a relationship with TNFD since its inception, and our commitment to TNFD to map their data, new nature-based data, to their framework is on track. And we're looking at putting that into play and into the market in 2025. Climate and biodiversity and nature should all work together, and the data that underpins that is a real necessity going forward. Finally, this is one of the things that I think we should think about because we're all sitting here in Dubai. We're all at COP28. This is the Stocktake. Let's turn it around and think about where we started. What is the Stocktake all about? And how is it that countries can really find where their NDC commitments are going to go next? I think we're all waiting for how that turns out. But what I would say is that we really need to make sure that the country is also looking at the data that is being disclosed by the cities, the states, the regions. And they really only have a couple of levers, countries. They have their direct emissions, their direct actions, just like any corporate or entity. Then they also have policy, which is enormously important. I think we're hearing that in all of the corridors we walk. Sometimes that combination is very powerful in a country. Sometimes it's not. And either way, what we need to think about is a whole-of-economy approach. And that's where CDP fits in. You know, when we look at non-state actors, adding to the data that we also have at cities, states, and regions, we can be an indispensable partner of making sure the next global stocktake looks at the entire economy. So if we don't do that, I just wonder what it is that we are actually measuring, what it is that we're tracking, because most of the emissions do come from the real economy. So I'd love to leave you all in this story thinking about not only what happens next, but also what we can do. I've heard a lot, and again, you know, I'm a new CEO of CDP. Yeah, this is week 9 for me. So for me, this is important to actually get out into the open. I hear it a lot. Data's the problem. Data quality. Data's missing. There isn't enough data. I can't do it because the data. I invite you to think about it differently. In this story, data is on the journey with us. Data is something we need. It is the map, because we are the characters in this story, and we need to have a way of understanding where to go. We need to be able to know, as characters, what roles we play and how we can play them faster and better. And with data, you're going to be able to at least have that wind at your back, those tools in your kit bag. So I would say, perhaps we can think that data is the solution. And we can all contribute to that to build transparency at the corporate level and at the country level. It can help us all be the heroes. The end. Thank you very much.